Yes. They say every woman hides a truth she's afraid to face. Mine didn't whisper. It burned its way to the surface the night I realized my heart had wandered somewhere it shouldn't have. I thought I loved Ryan. I thought what we had was enough. We'd been together for almost a year, and everything about him was right on paper. He was kind, dependable, the kind of man mothers pray their daughters will marry. He held doors open, remembered anniversaries, never raised his voice. With him, life was calm, safe. But sometimes safety can feel like silence, and silence can start to sound a lot like loneliness. Then there was Reeve, Ryan's best friend. Tall, quiet, with that effortless kind of confidence that never needed attention, but always drew it anyway. He had a way of entering a room and shifting the air without saying a single word. The first time our eyes met, it wasn't a casual glance. It was an understanding. A question neither of us had the courage to ask. There was depth in his gaze, something sharp and searching, like he could see the parts of me I kept hidden even from myself. I told myself I was imagining it, that it was harmless, but that look stayed with me, echoing in the back of my mind long after he'd walked away. Weeks passed. Every time I saw him, at dinners, at gatherings, in fleeting moments when Ryan would step out of the room, the silence between us grew heavier, almost alive. I started noticing small things. The way his jaw tightened when he laughed, how his eyes softened when he looked at me, how he'd glance away a second too late. Maybe I started looking too. Maybe I had been waiting for him to look first. Then came that night. Ryan had invited him over after work. We ordered takeout, laughed over old memories, played a few songs in the background. It felt like any other evening until Ryan's phone rang. A work call. He stood up, smiling at both of us, and said casually, "Don't let her get bored, man. I'll be back in an hour." He had no idea how much that hour would change everything. The moment the door closed behind him, the room felt different. The laughter faded, leaving behind a silence that pulsed with unspoken thoughts. Reeve sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone. I tried to focus on the TV, but every sound seemed louder. The hum of the air conditioner, the flicker of the screen, the rhythm of my own heartbeat. I could feel him there, his presence heavy in the room, steady, quiet, unavoidable. "I'll make some tea," I muttered, desperate for something to do. My voice sounded too soft, too nervous. I walked into the kitchen, trying to calm my breathing. But seconds later, I sensed him behind me. Not close enough to touch, but close enough that I could feel the warmth of him. I reached for the kettle, my hand trembling slightly. The cup tipped, spilling hot water across the counter. I gasped. "You okay?" His voice was low, deep, the kind that settled under your skin. Before I could answer, he was beside me, his hand wrapping around mine. His touch was firm, steady, too steady. I could feel the heat of his skin against mine, the quiet tremor of restraint. That touch said everything words never could. I should have pulled away, but I didn't. My back brushed the counter and he was suddenly inches away. I looked up and he was already watching me. No words passed between us, but in that charged stillness, something irreversible cracked open. His hand slid slowly, almost cautiously to my waist. His movements were deliberate, like he was giving me a chance to stop him. I didn't. Every nerve in my body screamed not no, but don't stop. When his lips brushed the side of my neck, I froze, but not out of fear. Out of surrender. His breath was warm against my skin, his fingers tracing the hem of my shirt, grazing the bare skin beneath. The world around us disappeared. It wasn't about lust, it was about recognition. Like we had both been walking through a fog, and in that moment finally saw each other clearly. It wasn't planned, it wasn't right, but it was real. So real that everything else in my life suddenly felt staged, like a role I'd been playing too long. We didn't go further than that. No clothes were shed, no words of love were spoken, but something far more dangerous was lost. The thin, fragile line between loyalty and longing. When Ryan came home, the sound of his keys jolted us back to reality. I stepped away. Reeve moved first, sitting back on the couch as if nothing had happened. By the time Ryan walked in, smiling, everything looked normal. We laughed, we talked, we carried on, but under the surface, everything had shifted. The next day, my phone stayed silent. No message from Reeve, no apology, no explanation. I didn't text either, but that didn't matter. Every moment of that night replayed in my mind like a secret I couldn't forget. I still cared for Ryan, maybe in the way you care for something familiar, something safe. But what I felt for Reeve was different. It wasn't safe. It was dangerous, alive, impossible to control. Days turned into weeks. We never spoke of it again. But silence has its own language. Every time I saw him standing beside Ryan, every time our eyes met across a crowded room, it spoke louder than words ever could. A glance, a pause, a flicker of memory, it was all there, hidden beneath the surface. One evening, Ryan invited him over again. I tried to act normal, to smile and laugh in all the right places, but my heart was racing for reasons Ryan could never understand. He was talking about work, cracking jokes, completely unaware of the current running between his best friend and the woman sitting beside him. Across the room, Ryan's gaze found mine again, steady, unreadable, but full of the same quiet electricity that had never gone away. And in that moment, I realized something. Sometimes love doesn't announce itself with promises or plans. Sometimes it shows up quietly, in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it changes everything. Once it starts, there's no going back.